Welcome to Steve Garden University. We will be creating a Twitch chatbot. First, you need to have Node.js. That's what we're going to be using to make this. It's really a simple way to make a chatbot. That's how I made my chatbot. Okay, so let's start. There we go. That's our. I'm using Visual Studio Code. That's what I use to write code. Uh, you can use whatever you want. This has a terminal built into it, which is useful. Here's the Node.js download page. If you want to install it, if you don't have it installed already, you just choose which installer you need, and it shouldn't take long to install. We're going to be using a package called tmi.js. So once you have Node.js installed and everything, all you gotta do is run some commands to start your project. I'm working in a directory called Twitch Chatbot, so it doesn't matter where you go as long as it's an empty directory. So in order to start a new project, then you can just do npm init. That's how you create a new node project. It'll ask some questions. So the package name I'm gonna leave the default. A lot of the defaults will work just fine. So Twitch chatbot name version 1, sure. Description, not now. Entry point index.js. That's what we're gonna call the main file that we put all our code in. So we're gonna leave that. There's no test command. The git repository is keywords. I don't know. Author. It's gonna be Steve. That's me. I'm Steve. License. You can choose a license. MIT. That's one that I like to use a lot sometimes. And then it'll ask you to verify the file. And when you say it's okay, it's going to create a new file called package.json. That's what makes it a package. And this has all the information about your package. And once you install other packages that you're going to use, it'll be listed here. So anyone else who gets the file can create their own copy of it. It'll install all the required packages. Now, we're going to be using tmi.js. So for that, in the project directory, we're going to do npm install. There's many different versions of this command, but this is how I type it. Install tmi.js. And also you can put this -- save. That'll write it to your project.json. And then once you do that, it'll download a bunch of stuff. And there it is, installed. Now let's look at what changed. Yeah, right there. tmi.js is now listed in your dependencies. And that's really the only dependency we're using right now. I'm only going to show how to make a very basic chatbot that you can expand however you want. It's up to you. Alright, now we're going to need to make the configuration file. This is the way I like to do things. So we have a file called config.json. Yep, there it is. And then in there, we're going to have a JSON object, which will have all of our configurable options. In this case, it'll be a username and password. That's it. That's all we need right now. That'll be how you log in to Twitch from the bot. And that's the configuration. Very easy. Now you'll have to fill in whatever your channel username is for your Twitch channel. And the password is an OAuth password, which you have to get twitchapps.com/TMI, and that's where it'll help you get a OAuth password. Alright, next up, we're going to make a new file. Our actual code is going to go into. We don't need the terminal right now. We're going to get rid of that. and then make a new file in the same directory, index.js. So first we need to include our configuration, right? We have it in our JSON file, but now we need to get it into our code. So all I gotta do is make a variable to hold it. I'll call it config. We're gonna use the require function. We're gonna put the relative path to config.json. Alright, now all our configuration data is right there in the config object. You access it just like any object. Now let's bring in the package we're going to use. Any packages need to be imported the same way. We're going to use the require function. This time we're going to name the package that we want, which is tmi.js. Now we have everything we need from outside. Now it's inside. Next step is we're going to create the client. We need to make a client in order to interact with Twitch. That'll be in a variable. We're going to call it client. In order to do this, we need to, we're going to use a new object from the TMI package, a new client object, and it takes the options, which is an object. We're going to have a connection block, which has some options that we're going to use. First, we have the secure, which you want to use if you want to use SSL, secure communications. Reconnect. You turn that on so it'll automatically try to reconnect if it loses connection. Identity. This is where you're going to include your username and password, which are stored in the config object right now. So you have username set to config.username. See, it's conveniently available through that variable. You don't have to even think about what they're set to. It also keeps your secret data separate from your code. Password, that's that. And then one more thing. Right now it'll log in and you can send messages, but you won't receive any messages. You won't be able to see what's in your chat. So what you need to do is add one more thing here. You can also do this later after making the object. After you have the client connection and everything, you can join the channels. It's easiest to do it here if you're only going to be in one channel. Actually, this is not an object. You got to use square brackets because it's an array of channel names. Now we can put just our channel name in there, which is the same as our username, right? Okay, and that's that. That's all configured. Here we have all the options explained. Reconnects when you lose connection. Default, that is off. So usually you want that on if you want a long living bot. And secure uses SSL. And then identity is username and password. And channels. List of channels join. You can have any number of channels. So now that we have our client, but right now it's not doing anything. Nothing's happening. We can run this code and nothing will happen. So next up is connecting to the chat. All you gotta do is use your client, connect method, no arguments. But this creates a promise, which is a common way to do asynchronous stuff. If you want it to happen in the background and then come back when it's done, that's a common way to do it. But you have to chain some other methods there. So after connecting to dot, then supply your own function that'll happen as soon as it's done the work from connect. So as soon as it connects, this will happen. There, it doesn't send any data back, so we're just gonna have an empty parentheses and then arrow function. I usually use arrow functions. So when you connect, we're gonna log a message just so we know everything's working. Console.log and then just write a message. Connected. So that's what happens when it's successful. But what happens when it's not successful? You want to catch any errors using the catch method. You can have multiple of thens, and they chain together, and they can have a catch at the end to catch any errors. And this will send a message. So we're gonna have one variable in our arrow function, and we'll just log the error, failed to connect, and then also log the actual error message to the console so we can see what it is. That'll actually print out an entire stack trace, and then that's it. We're using the connect method to connect this client made above, and when it connects, it'll say connected. If it fails to connect, it'll say failed to connect and print a log. So that's all set. We now have a connected client. Of course, it happens in the background. So at this point, we're not actually connected, but very shortly after this, we will be. It's all asynchronous. Now we need to actually start listening to some events. With TMI, you can listen to almost all the events that happen in chat. Almost, except for new follows. Unfortunately, for new follows, you need to use a webhook, which is a whole different thing. Let's look at what we have for events. We have a big long list of events here. We can listen to all these and handle them however we want. This documentation has an example of every item. The client.on function is what we use to listen to events. And then we name the event and we supply a function that we want to execute. We're going to listen for the most important event, I think, is the chat event. Let's go back to our code. We're going to start listening to the chat event. We use the on, and then we have chat event. That's the first argument. Second argument is the function that will execute every time the chat event. So I'm going to use arrow function again. And the list of arguments is channel. This will be the name of the channel that received the event. If you're on multiple channels, you use this to figure out where it came from and where to send any responses. The next argument is user state, which includes a lot of information about the user that sent the message or triggered whatever event you're listening to. Every event has a user state, and some of them add or remove certain parts of it. So it's based on the context, you'll get different data. The third argument is the message. This is the actual message that was sent. All the text from the message. And then the last one is called self. That tells you whether or not the message came from the bot itself. So this will prevent any infinite loop situations where your bot is responding to itself repeatedly, which is not something you want to happen. But that's handy to filter out any messages that came from your own bot. And that's it. Now inside the body of this function, you do whatever you want with that message. Anything you want. It's all whatever you can imagine. We're just gonna respond with the response, the static response, just to make sure things are working. Right? So if the message, let's trim it, right? Good to trim things in case someone puts a space in the front of it or something. Accidentally. Let's trim left. That'll just get rid of any spaces that are in front of the message. And then let's see, it does it start with. And let's say if the message starts with hello, we'll respond. And in order to send a message, we're going to use another method on our client. It's called say, and the say method takes two arguments. The channel name. So we'll send it back to the channel that sent the original message. So that's in the channel variable. The message is what we send. So let's go ahead and roll these backticks so we can include some variables. Say hello. And then let's put the name of the user that sent it. So to put variables inside here, use a $sign and curly braces. And now we can include variables. Let's put user state display name. Since it has a hyphen in it, we can't use a dot to access it. Normally I put user state dot the variable. But in this case there's a hyphen, so you have to use it the same way you use an array. The square braces. Let's just put the exclamation for, excitement. Now if you run this code, it'll work. It should work. Well, let's include a semicolon at the end. Those are easy to forget. Let me set up my config file. Okay, we are back. Now, let's open up our terminal and try to run it. We're in the directory, so to run your code, type node index.js. Hey, look, it says it's connected. So now, if someone types exclamation hello, they'll get a response. Let me test it. For anyone watching live, you get to see the response. And look, it did work. We now have a Twitch chatbot that's just responding to a simple chat. Inside this function, you can really do whatever you want. You can access a database or respond in a more intelligent way. You can have different commands. Totally up to your imagination. Let's add one more event. Let's see. We got a chat event, which is one of the most important ones, and we can have what else? Let's add another event. Client on. Let's try a cheer event. That's when someone sends bits. And that function, that takes the channel name, which they all do that to tell you what channel the event occurred in. And then the user state. What else? The message. Because a cheer also has a message that goes with it. So you may notice there is no bits variable. Nothing there to tell you how many bits were sent. That's because it is hidden inside the user state object. That's how you get the bits. That's user state.bits. We'll log the event. So let's start with the user state username. That's the username of the user that did the cheer. Cheered the number of bits. User state.bits. That's how you find the bits. Now in real life, you'll want to do something better with this probably. You might want to make a little alert pop up, but that's up to you. Alright, now let's include the message. Easy enough, just have the curly braces and message. And there you go. Every time anyone cheers, the bot will log in your terminal. It'll say the username cheered, how many bits with message, and then the message. So if I cheered 5 bits, it'll say Steve Garden cheered 5 bits with message, whatever message I sent. Yeah, that's it. We'll run the server once more. And then we're connected. Now, not only will it respond to exclamation hello with a greeting, it'll also respond to any cheers with a nice little message in your log. You get the idea of how you can put whatever you want in these functions. So all the code is available on GitHub, and there's also a written version of this tutorial, which is on the new website at stevegarden.rocks. Alright, that is all I had for this tutorial. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.